Hello and welcome to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Milmoy and this is episode 61, Hat Architect, an interview with Woolly Wormhead.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright. I need a drink, I need a friend.
Yarn in the City creates experiential, yarn-centric events for knitters and makers designed to bring people together through a shared love of craft. Yarn in the City organises the Great London Yarn Crawl, taking place on Saturday the 5th of September 2015. For more information and to book your tickets, go to www.yarninthecity.com today. Hello everybody and welcome to the show. A warm welcome to any new listeners that are joining us today for the first time, and a hearty welcome back to anyone who is a returning listener. It's always great to have you with me and I really appreciate you all tuning in. Today is Tuesday the 25th of August. How are you all? I hope you've all been well since last week when I spoke to you last. We had, after my writing off of the rest of the Scottish summer, we had a weekend of reasonably warm weather, which was quite a surprise, I must admit, as I wandered down the beach with no flip-flops on in the beating hot sun. But as you would probably imagine, things have returned to a somewhat more steady state of a bit cold and a bit minging this week. Still, that means there's always plenty time for getting a bit of knitting in, making your selections for your winter wardrobe, planning your projects and welcoming, if it ever left, the chunky, lovely delight of a bulky yarn and some big needles. So what do I have for you today? Well, I have a couple of quick notices before we start the show, and then I have an interview with the wonderful Woolly Wormhead. So get yourself a rooibos, because that's how we roll, or possibly even an Irish coffee. I'm in that kind of mood today, and we will crack on with the show. So just a couple of quick news points for you before we go straight into the interview with Woolly. First up, not sure if I mentioned it, might not have told you, but the podcast has been nominated in 2 categories for the UK Podcasters Awards, which will be taking place on the 12th of September in Manchester. The voting for this closes on the 31st of August, so last final push this week, please, to send it to anyone you know who will vote for us, and let's get those last numbers up against the other podcasts in the 2 categories, which are Games and Hobbies and Most Engaged Audience, which was amazing to be voted into the finals of, and that's all down to you guys and your efforts. So last big push, please. If you can send it to anyone that hasn't voted, if you can vote yourself if you're out and about, it would be really very much appreciated. You'll all no doubt be pleased to hear that progress on the Shawl of Awesome, which I have undertaken. Now, you know me, I'm not much of a fast knitter. I'm certainly not a committed monogamous knitter. But I have been, for you guys, the Shawl of Awesome, hashtag Shawl of Awesome as it is now known, is progressing at pace and with gusto, and I am on 38 rows to go. So I've worked out that if I do 3 rows a day, I can have it finished in 2 weeks. So that's what I'm going to do. I did 4 rows last night because I'm a little overachiever. And yeah, I'm knitting this beautiful shawl in dyed for yarn, 100% silk, 2 strands of light lace weight held double, beautiful size 5 Miyuki triangle beads, which are glinty and wonderful, and I'm on chart D now, which is going into the hardcore lace section. But as I mentioned, Boo Knits, who is the designer of the shawl, which is called Out of Darkness, is an absolute genius, and she specialises in designing knitting patterns that have a really complicated finished object but are deceptively easy to knit. And as I said last week, I was knitting on the pub in this, so it really isn't a difficult pattern. So if you're starting out, don't be frightened by the sort of ornate and complicated looking nature of these patterns, because they're really well written, they're very well explained, everything's totally clear to follow, and as long as you've got your stitch markers in, you are only doing a 12 stitch repeat for the most part, so it is really straightforward and very achievable for pretty much everyone, I would say. So I think we might do a little shawl knit along after this, because it's a bit lonely on my own, even though I've been sharing it with you all on Instagram. Every night I'm sort of checking in and showing off my somewhat slow progress. I'm 4 rows later on now. Look at my shawl. It looks just like it did last time. And I try and take pictures on different chairs to keep it interesting for you. But yeah, I think we might do a little knit along of shawls after this is finished, because I can see definitely some more boo knits in my future. So that's progressing well. So I'm doing my part. Hopefully you guys are doing your part and you're doing your voting, and fingers crossed that I'll have a beautiful shawl to wear and maybe a couple of awards to pick up on the 12th of September. In other news, our ongoing giveaway for some Rusty Ferret yarn is still open, so if you want a chance to win some Rusty Ferret yarn and a project bag, as discussed in episode 60, which was an interview with the lovely Leona of Fluff, Rusty Ferret is a Dundee based dye. They're quite new and definitely on the endangered list in terms of there's not much of it out there at the moment, so it'd be definitely a good idea to get in there now. The colourway, stop laughing, I can hear you all laughing already, don't laugh. The colourway is called Brood for Girders. I can't say it. I sound like I'm half Afrikaans trying to say that. Girders. I used to have a Scottish accent when I was a kid, apparently, but not anymore, clearly. Brood for Girders is going to be on the giveaway yarn. I'm completely distracted now. And it is a beautiful shade of Illuminous Iron Brew Orange, and the giveaway question is, what is your favourite crazy Scottish thing that you would like turned into yarn? Now, even if you don't want to enter, get yourself over to the group, because there are some quality comedy answers in there. Someone has been talking about the underneath of men's kilts already in about the first 5 posts, so that's the kind of level we're going in at, and it's the kind of level that frankly I can't get enough of. I love it. So get in there and put your favourite crazy Scottish thing that you'd like to see turned into yarn, and you never know, Rusty Ferret might even go for some of these. That'd be quite good fun. I think I could definitely get involved in some of that. The Great London Yarn Crawl is coming up soon, and I've opened a thread in the group, so if you're going, please do pop over and let me know. It's taking place on the 5th of September in London, with a pop-up marketplace at the Chelsea Town Hall. It's going to be great fun, I think. A lot of you seem to be going, and please do come and find me, even if you're a bit shy or you're not maybe on Ravelry or in the Ravelry group. Come and find me on the day, and please do say hello to me. And I'd love to meet you all. Can't wait. So I think it's about time that because we're going for a fairly pacey delivery today. And that's in no way to do with the strength of tea that I drank at a networking meeting this morning, but we're going to go on to the interview. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Woolly Wormhead, she is a knitting designer who is obsessed with all things hats. She's the author of 8 books dedicated to hats, and she delights in exploring the extremities to which you can take the humble hat. Drawing on her background as an engineer and also in fine art, she focuses on the sculptural aspects of hat design. She is a hat architect, and she invites you to be too, so I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Woolly Wormhead onto the show. This episode is sponsored by Yarn in the City. Yarn in the City organises the annual Great London Yarn Crawl, which is taking place this year on Saturday the 5th of September. This year's Yarn Crawl will also feature the addition of a one-day pop-up marketplace, taking place at Chelsea Old Town Hall and featuring over 30 vendors from London and around the UK. To top off the weekend, on Sunday the 6th of September 2015, Yarn in the City will be hosting author, pattern designer and technical editor Kate Atherley for 2 workshops in central London. Introduction to knitwear design and pattern writing skills. For more information And to book your tickets to these events, head over to www.yarninthecity.com. I'm delighted to welcome Woolly Wormhead on the show today. How are you, Woolly?
I'm fine, thank you, and thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure. So for those people who maybe don't know you as well, can you tell us a bit about you as a person and about how you came to be interested in yarny pursuits?
Okay, I design hats and only hats, and probably always will be only hats. For me, hats are a combination of all the things that interest me. I have obviously my interest in knitting, and I've been knitting since I was a child. My mum taught me when I was 3. Um, I used to be an art teacher, and I have a specialism in fine art textiles, in textile sculpture specifically. And prior to that, I was an electronics engineer. So all of these things come together brilliantly in hats, in the way obviously I'm knitting. I'm To me, hats are wearable sculptures, so I think about it as a 3D form, and the way that the structure fits around our heads, and the way that we can create sculptures in different shapes that come away from that just simple circle that fits around our head. And of course, the problem solving side and the logical side fits together very, very well with working out stitch counts and thinking about design elements and how they can repeat. In terms of who I travel a lot. I spend a lot of my time in a double-decker bus, which quite a few people might know about. And we're always exploring and looking at new ways of living and places to go. And I think that also is reflected in the way that I work, in the way that I approach design, especially my photography.
Oh, brilliant. So you mentioned you were a teacher before
Hmm.
and you were an electronics engineer as well.
Yes.
So what was the tipping point that turned your hobby and your knitting and your design into a full-time business?
Well, teaching, I love teaching and I love working with the kids, but it was too much for me. I eventually got burnt out, and I was actually medically retired from teaching, which was probably quite a blessing in disguise, really. And during my final year of teaching, I started blogging, and that's when I became Woolly Wormhead. And then once I'd stopped teaching, to help me sort of recover, because I'd basically had a breakdown, I was working more and more with my knitting, but also those little bits of problem solving, those little beginning design elements, the little things that kept my brain ticking over, and they helped me recover and get myself back together. But and there I had was this amazing thing that suddenly a new window had opened up, and it was just brilliant because it was just everything worked. It was like leaving teaching the way I did was meant to be, because everything fell into place from there.
So you've mentioned that you travel around and your design work, you've talked about a little bit, but what does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, I don't think I've got a typical day. I mean, at the moment, a typical day is kind of like we're in the UK, which is our other base, and I'm just surrounded by stuff, and we're trying to kind of just sort things out. And when I'm here, my day is very, very different because my studio is portable, so I have to work out how it's going to fit in. But I'm say get up in the morning and do my emails and try and find some knitting time. Um, no, I don't know if it's a difficult day at all. I don't know. I mean, when we're in Italy, it's very, very different because I've got a bit more of a studio there in a trailer, so everything's a bit more mapped out, so I can focus a little bit more there. So I tend to travel less when we're there and travel more when we're here. So it's very unpredictable, which is mostly, well, I could do with it being a bit more predictable sometimes, I have to say. But the beautiful thing about hats is they're very, very portable. So I just take them with me, and I've got my notebook, I've got my phone for recording everything I do. And so I'm always working, even if I'm sitting on the train, I'm always working.
Super. So when you are designing one of your hats, then can you tell us a little bit about your creative process when you develop a new design?
Oh, okay. Sometimes it starts with a yarn, and sometimes it starts with some texture or something I've seen somewhere. I'm quite influenced by design, especially kind of modern industrial design, because yeah, I live in a bus and I'm very interested in vehicles and that kind of transition. And I'm much more kind of, I like tires and big bits of metal and things like that. So that's the kind of architecture that I would be influenced by from a design. But sometimes it is the yarn that just sort of says it wants to be something. When I start designing a hat, I always start with the crown. I remember reading on Ravelry back in the really early days, as somebody was talking about, they were talking about hat design somewhere, and somebody said, "Well, what's the point in worrying about a crown? Because nobody ever looks at the crown of the hat." And I was absolutely mortified because it was just kind of the crown is the part of the hat where everything comes together, and it is everybody does see the crown of a hat. It's not hidden away just because it's on top of your head. And to me, it's kind of like the culmination of all the other elements that you bring into the hat. They come and finish off at that point. So for when I'm designing, that's where I start. I start there, and then I work out what I want it to come. So it's like the design spreads out from that center point and comes down around the shoulder. You can't see my hands are describing everything sculpturally here, trying to show you how I design a hat. But that's my flow of a process. I might well be influenced by a stitch pattern or a texture I've seen somewhere that I want to incorporate into the body of the hat. But I will start thinking about where the numbers work at the crown, and I'll know whether it's gradable before I even start designing a hat, because I like to have at least 3 sizes in all my patterns. So if I can't get that out of it, then it doesn't go anywhere as a rule. Although I've just said that, and I'm working on some designs that can't be graded at all.
I love it. There's nothing like breaking your own rules. It's brilliant.
Exactly. Sort of rules of 4.
Exactly. Oh, well, what about obviously? You just mentioned you've got your studio in Italy, and you've been redoing that recently. I've been watching the progress on Instagram and things.
Yes.
How are you finding having that fixed studio is affecting your work and your design?
Well, I've never had that much space to myself before, so I'm still a little bit overwhelmed by it, I think. The trailer isn't mine, it's my partner's mum's trailer, so I'm kind of just using it for the time being. So part of me doesn't want to get too attached to it. But it's amazing. It's absolutely brilliant because it has so much light. It's an old German army trailer from World War II, and it's got a domed roof and windows that line all the way down the side, and it's just an incredible space to be in because there is so much light, but also because of the way that it was designed. The trailers originally were quite designed to be modular, so they could be stacked, joined up together, various bits and pieces. The space inside is absolutely brilliant because I've been able to utilize every single corner of it, that nothing gets wasted at all. So it's really, really good. Loads of storage in there, and I'm loving it. I think it's going to be very, very helpful in my creative process. I think I'm going to be able to sit in there. I'm looking forward to when we get back at some point and sitting in there and just designing and having it all there, so that I don't have to. I'll be decluttered and be able to focus much more.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like a great space. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about it. But as I say, it's not really mine. I can't get too attached to it. So, but no, it's lovely. It's lovely.
Lovely. So, no journey in life is ever a smooth one. Running a business has its ups and downs. Can you tell us about a time that things maybe haven't quite gone to plan? What happened and what did you learn as a result of it?
I've been thinking about this, and I don't know if there's one time specifically, but I think there's been several times when I've had to sit and rethink about what I'm doing and where I'm going and where my focus is. And I think those times when I've fallen off my own path, or those times when my confidence has been quite low and I've felt influenced or pressured to kind of try something that I wasn't 100% confident about, or feeling that my designs don't fit in quite very well with the mainstream, or something I'm doing isn't quite right, when actually really it was right because it was my thing. Does that make sense? So it's I think one of my falling point, and it does happen periodically, and it can happen whether it's in my designing, whether it's the yarns I choose, or whether it's the way I approach my photography, or even the way I blog. I find myself sometimes being quite influenced by peer pressure and what's going on around, and then my confidence goes completely because I think I'm not doing that, I'm not like that, and I start to worry, and then I start to try that thing, and then I find it doesn't work, and then 6 months down the road I think to myself, that was daft. Why didn't you just do what you do anyway, because that's your strength? So I think, I don't know if it's a particular one instance of failing, but it's a kind of like a wave of motion, as a little blip that I kind of lose my way.
No, that makes perfect sense. And it's something that a lot of other people have, when I've interviewed them, have brought up about being your own sort of authentic self and finding your own voice and sticking to that, even when other people aren't doing the same thing that you're doing.
Exactly. It's something I feel really, really strongly about, but it's very, very hard to do because there are so many other things going on in the industry at the moment. There's so much activity, but there's also lots of voices merging, and you just think, I don't know what to do about that or say about that, because people have opinions. Everybody's entitled to opinions, but at the same time, I sit there and wonder and think, that's not me. It's not like me. What am I doing wrong? And it is. I've got to. I think everybody has to remember to try and stick to who they are, because that is where your strength is.
Absolutely. Nobody is, well, you don't have any competition. If you're just concentrating on being you, there is no competition because nobody can be you better than you. So,
Exactly, and I think that's part of my problem certainly, is that I forget that it's not a competition, it's not a popularity contest. It doesn't matter if I don't get all the favourites on a design, it doesn't matter if I don't get into the top 10 on Ravelry, that kind of stuff. I rarely do. And it's just kind of, what does that matter? Because my designs, I'm happy with my design, and if the people that like my designs are happy, then isn't that that's all I need, isn't it? I don't need to be part of a competition. I don't want to feel like I'm being pressured in some way. I think we all get it. I think it's all our own creative securities that we all have. And I think that in turn is what makes us stamp our own feet to say, this is who I am. And then, and in turn, somebody goes, oh, that's who you are. Who am I? It's like a knock-on effect.
yeah, definitely. And the other thing is, as well, is if you want to get into the top 10 on Ravelry, then you can. Just give out a free pattern and you'll be in the top 10. Doesn't mean it's any good, it means it's free.
Exactly. It's just a practice. It's no reflection on the quality of the design at all. And it's no reflection on whether or not there's going to be longevity to the design either, really. Because that's
Yeah,
what you got to aim for. You want to aim for something that's, well, for me personally, I feel I want to aim for something that's sustainable rather than a kind of one hit wonder.
yeah. Um, Certainly. And the ones that do that, they're always in the top on the front page. You know, they
Yeah.
might not be in the top 20 necessarily, but they'll always be on the first page of the
Yeah.
results when you open patterns,
Yeah.
because they do have that quality, as you say. So let's take it the other way and say, what's been the high point of your journey so far?
Ooh. I don't know. That's tricky. There have been several.
Well, we'll have them all then, you know.
I know that I was really, really excited when Painted Woolly Toppers came together. I felt like for the first time in a few years that I brought a project together that really reflected it 100% the way I wanted it to be. From the way that my photography worked, from the colour reproduction in printing, so many things in that book came together that really ticked all my happy buttons. And that's only just recently come out, so that's kind of still quite fresh and it's still very, very good. And it's a book that makes me very, very happy. And it's had a really positive response so far as well, which is really good, because when it's really nice when something you like is also liked by other people.
True.
It kind of like it just kind of confirms that you're doing it right then, love. um Another point that I was really proud was also my first book, which Going Straight, which was a much bigger book. I don't work on such big books now because they're quite time consuming, and I don't always feel that I necessarily get reflected back the amount of work I've put in. Going Straight was probably a perfect example of that because it's my poorest selling book. But I still love it because it was a challenge that I did myself to design 24, well, I did more than 24, but lots and lots of hats designed sideways, turning construction, everything on its side, which is quite a big task really for a first self-published book. But I'm still really, really proud of it. And the way that the people, so not many, it's my worst selling book, but those that have bought it absolutely love it and still write to me now and tell me how useful it is and all the tutorials on kitchen on all of those things. So that's still really been a high point, even though that was what 8 years ago now.
Wow.
Mm, yeah, it's funny. It's nice to have done something like that, and still feel the value in it now, and still have people tell me their value in it. It's really, really nice, really reassuring.
So, again, I'm going to take you off down a rabbit hole now. What would be your top tips for people who would love to write a book or do a book of designs and self publish? What would be your top tips?
Okay, know your limitations.
That's a good one.
I mean, I do my own photography. I didn't originally. Going Straight, a good friend of mine, Pixel Diva, she did the photography of that, and she did a brilliant job. I now do my own photography because I've taught myself to, because it's part of my creative vision, that the way that I want to convey my designs, I have to be able to know how it's part through through how it works through the lens, that the whole environment is part of it. I also have taught myself how to do layout work, because again, that feels like it's part of my process. And I do everything on open source, so I'm kind of a bit odd like that, because it's really quite hard to get other layout designers to sort of like work with me, because I just have rather peculiar software. I don't have the same software as everybody else. So I have learned through those processes what I can and cannot do. I've stuck rather doggedly to using a particular type of software, because I know that software well, and I know what I can achieve with it and what I can't achieve with it, rather than trying to leap in at the deep end with another type of software that I know nothing about, and then end up kind of muddling through, and then looking at it and thinking, actually, I really didn't achieve my best there because I didn't know what I was doing. So I think it's really, really important to know what you are capable of doing and what you are not capable of doing. And this isn't this okay, this is going to sound a bit odd, having just said when this industry isn't a competition, but it's really, really useful to look at the quality of other people's work to see where the industry standard is. Because if one thing that certainly probably came mostly out of Ravelry, because that's when all the designers started to appear in one place. It was much easier to be able to see what everybody was doing. But the one thing I learned there was the quality of the photography that people were putting out. More and more people back then were doing it themselves. I think now there's quite a few sort of like photographers for knitwear designers, and there's much more contracting and liaisons and collaborations that are going on. But I looked around, I thought, right, okay, this is what I need. This is my weak spot. This is what I need to put my effort into, to be able to present my work better. Because I used to take photographs of them on polystyrene heads. The polystyrene heads would be painted up to make it more interesting. But actually, really, when I look back at those photographs, they were blooming awful. And I do so much better now, because I've kind of like been quite critical of what I've been achieving, pushing myself. I'm a perfectionist.
I think that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with doing something and then looking back at it and going, right, okay, what have I learned from that? How can I make it better?
Yes.
And
Yes, I think it's really, yeah, it's really important to really reevaluate and see where you've fallen down. See what look at the quality of your work. And don't think just because you're self-published, it's really, really hard when you're self-publishing, because you do have to wear so many hats, which I don't mind doing in lots
you
of
do like a
ways.
hat.
I like a good hat. I'll have another one. But it's just, you have to be able to look at be realistic about what you're able to achieve. There are so many people now that can help with photography and layout work. Obviously, don't ever do your own tech editing. That should go without saying. And realize what you are capable of doing and what you're not capable of doing. Copy editing, for instance, writing the blurb, I cannot do to save my life. I outsource that every single time, because otherwise I just sit there and give the objective facts, and it's really dry, and that's just so that's one thing I outsource on a regular basis. That's my weak spot now.
No, brilliant. Thank you for that. So, which one thing then that you know now did you wish you had known when you picked up that first ball of yarn? Bearing in mind you were 3 years old.
I'd love to have known how to graph when I was 3, really, because that you're always learning, it never ends. You pick it up and you just think you've mastered something, and it's just like, actually you haven't. There's so much to learn. It's always a new development, something new to explore. I know that now. It's brilliant. I love it. But it's just, yeah, always something new to try out. And sometimes it's always the obvious things that you don't realise, because I was mostly self-taught. My mum taught me to knit, but there were lots of things that I worked out for myself. For instance, I worked out how to do short rows. I didn't know what they were called, and then when I got on the internet, however many years later, it's like, oh, that's what they are.
Desert Island skeins. If you were going to be marooned on desert island and could only take one skein or ball of yarn, what would you take and why?
This is a really tough question. Probably a skein of Malabrigo Rios. It was a tough call between Lorna's Laces Shepherd Worsted and the Rios, but I think the Rios has probably it's a slightly stronger yarn, so it's probably just gonna survive on a desert island slightly better. I think Lorna's Laces is very, very soft, and I'll probably just wear it out too quickly. I love hand-dyed yarns, and I sat there when I read this question. I sat there for ages trying to think, and there are so many. It's really, really hard to choose one. I'm working with some handmade and best at the moment, and that's just delicious. It's just like, right, would I take this? I think, I don't know. So, yes, I'm a bit of a fail there, really. I think I'd probably be the person trying to smuggle in more than one.
Don't worry, lots of people do that.
Yeah.
You either get the super sensible ones who want like kitchen cotton, or you get the ones who are effortlessly stylish and take lace weight so they'll have more of it and they can make a lovely garment, or you get the ones who are just like, yeah, I'm going to take something beautiful and
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then you get the ones who are like, can I not take some more? No.
Yeah.
No, you can't. The question is one. You
I
may
tell you
not
what,
take tools either.
well, as somebody that's quite used to kind of traveling an awful lot and being limited by airline weights and everything, I'm quite used to wearing skeins of yarn around my neck or wrapping them around my wrist and just kind of smuggling through more yarn than I'm supposed to have.
That is brilliant because you hear all these stories, and I think, what? Please don't do this. Where people hide knitting needles in their hair or in their pencil cases, or they sharpen a bit of bamboo just to knit on the fly with a pencil sharpener. I've never heard anyone say this. They've smuggled yarn on before.
You just wear it. It's really sensible, really.
It's amazing. I love it. Oh, so what is your favourite or your go-to resource for yarncraft or for business that you couldn't do without?
Well, Ravelry is pretty important. Um, I yeah, probably use Ravelry more for because one of the most important things that I like to do is to research yarn and find out how many plies it's got, what kind of gauge it's got, and look at it texture. 'Cause prior to doing the fine art degree in textiles and post doing the engineering, I also did a degree in textiles BSc, so looking at industrial and textiles. So I kind of like I'm quite good with kind of like sussing out yarns and how they're going to work. So I do tend to, from photographs and things, because it's looking at the plies and things. So I do tend to research the yarns and look to see what's about to find out whether it's going to be suitable for a project or a comparable substitute. That's one of the biggest things that I actually use the internet for. I do that more than talking to people. So yes, Yarndex I used to use a lot, but I don't use it as much now. I'm not so more concerned with colorways. I'm looking at more of the other information that people have to say about the way that the yarn works and the feedback and the comments on it, to see whether or not it's going to work for what I want it to do. Also, I talk to people as well on the internet.
That's cool. It's really interesting.
Yeah, but no, I think Ravelry is probably it's still a very, very important area.
Super. Well, I have some extra questions that I'm going to sneak in here if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
I've been on Periscope this morning and asked the people what they would like to hear from you. So it's mostly Brits, I think, because obviously the Americans are not quite up out of bed yet.
Yeah, that's fine.
And one that came up about 3 or 4 times was, what is your favourite cake?
Okay, I actually really don't like cake. But I'm allergic to wheat, so I tend not to. I don't miss cake in that sense. But Tom, my partner, does make me a really, really nice carrot cake. I quite like the savoury cakes. If I'm going to have something, I don't do sweet. So probably carrot cake would be my favourite, but without all the cream and extra icing and stuff on top. Just a good, decent, gluten-free carrot cake.
Almost healthy, that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
one of your 5 a day.
Exactly.
A couple of the others we've already kind of talked about. Someone asked about what inspires your designs, which I think you covered really well earlier. But someone else has asked, how have your designs developed over time from when you started?
I think my designs go through phases. I get really interested in the technique, like I was saying with Going Straight, my first book, getting obsessed with sideways hats, which I still am a little bit. But I like to explore a technique or a construction method to the full, and then I'll move on to something else. So I look back. There was a big period and sort of from about 2009 for a couple of years where I was working an awful lot with lace patterns and incorporating them into shaping for the crown. Again, that's my other thing. Working out ways of trying to adjust the lace pattern, which is something I really, really enjoy doing. Then there was another phase where I did lots and lots of cables, especially with book for twisted woolly toppers, and thinking about twisted stitches and how the fabric changes when you start manipulating the stitches. So I think they've changed in the sense that I've explored. So I've gone out widthways rather than in a different direction. But I also think perhaps they're not as off the wall as they used to be. I don't know. Maybe I'm not the right person to pass that judgment, but I sort of look back at some of my really early designs and just I love them because they were really pointy and sticky uppy, and I want to make more pointy and sticky up things, but I haven't done that for a while. So, that's one area I think it's changed.
Do you think it's because when you first start out, you're desperate to do something like that's different and groundbreaking and amazing?
Yes, you want to leave your mark. Yes, I think that's a part of it, and I think one of for the next project I'm working on, Turning Heads, I am going back to those sticky uppy kind of outy things. They're going to be much more sculptural, but they're going to be much more refined. I think that's something that happens over time. Your design process refines, but I feel like I want to go back to this because that is where my mark is. That's the kind of the first mark that I made, and it's actually where it feels like it's my home to be in sticky uppy hats, for want of a better description.
I'm totally down with you with the sticky uppy hats.
They're great fun. That you can wear them. You've got something. Not everybody wants to wear something that everybody's going to be staring at. I appreciate that, but it's just kind of like you're wearing a statement piece. You've got something that nobody else has got. I mean, that's the case with the majority of hand knits anyway. But when you've been able to push a piece of fabric or a design to its limit and try it out and make it a big sculptural thing, because obviously in knitted fabric it's really hard to get things to just be sticky uppy without felting them. So you've actually got something that's actually kind of constructionally rather interesting too. That's my justification. I'm sticking to it.
That's all cool. I'm down with it. Super. I got another one from one of my lovely male listeners, Russell. He wants to know about hats for men. Have you got any kind of top tips or favourite ideas or patterns or designers that do hats specifically for the gentleman in life?
I do quite a few designs for men, and I run them past Tom from a design process, and I have to kind of consider what he would wear, and I find it really hard. I actually find design for men hard because you can't go as out there. The design process has been much more subtle, and I don't know anybody that does specifically do designs for men only, not hats. No. Just trying to think.
That was another week for you there then, fellas, woolly toppers.
Well, this is it. Yes, no, I have been thinking about doing a men's woolly toppers, and it's really interesting because from a business point of view, men's hats don't sell all that well. And I don't know why, because everybody always asks for them, and I've got quite a few. I've probably got a good 20 odd designs for men. But they really don't. From a business point of view, it's absolutely fascinating. It's kind of like, well, and I think it's because men, well, so I'm told, I don't know whether this is coming from the men themselves or from the women that knit for the men, that the men don't want anything other than their standard beanie. And I don't know if that's true or not. So if it's not true, I want to hear from men, and I want to hear what kind of designs you want to wear.
There you go, gauntlet laid down, guys. And there's quite a few male listeners on my podcast. And tweet Woolly, and let her know what you want. There you go.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I don't know. I think because it's one of those things that when you knit for a bloke, you like socks or a hat. You're not going to go for a jumper because it's too much effort. They're massive, and they'll probably leave you if you believe the folklore. So he's either socks or hat. So
yeah, and I hear so many times that and it's kind of like, well, he's not sure about that because he doesn't like this or doesn't like that, and I don't know. I don't. From what I hear, men are fussier than women about what they want to wear in hats, but I don't know if they're actually as less adventurous as I'm led to believe.
There's got to be a market in hipster hats, though. There's got to be one.
Yeah, slouchy. Yeah, that's where the hipster market is at. But if you look at get tongue tied. If you look at a lot of what the slouchy hats that the hipsters are wearing, they're still very plain. From a design point of view, there's really not a great deal in them. There would just be a really kind of low texture. There might be one or two big chunky cables, but as a whole, they're not very well. Not very well. They're not. What am I trying to say? I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'll get the words up.
Very exciting.
No, they're not very exciting. So from a design point of view, they don't push any boundaries either. They feel very safe. Nothing wrong with safe, but that's my feeling about them. So if anybody does want something a little bit different, tell me and I'll get working on it. I've got a male model. I can put out men's hat patterns.
Yeah, totally. And he's got a beard as well, so
Yes, he
perfect.
does when he can handle it. Yeah.
Awesome. So I had another one about what it's like to live or to spend time rather in an artist's commune.
That's a. I've only got the experience of the one on Mutonia, and probably the person that knows that I'm at Mutonia probably also know that we've had a very difficult couple of years trying to keep our site and keep our right to be there, which we've won, which has been absolutely amazing. We've had incredible support, especially from the knitting community for fundraising and raising awareness over that, which has been brilliant. I like it. It's not for everyone because you are living so closely with each other. You have to make decisions between it because we're self-governing. So you have to be able to work with each other or not. There's people politics are much more apparent than they would be, say, if you're just kind of living in a village or living in a town. You have to be critically aware of what other people are thinking or what other people want to do because you're living on top of each other. But I don't mind that because the flip side of it is that you have got an immediate community. You've got such an amazing network of people around you that are all like-minded, even if you all got different opinions about your art and various other things, you are all there for the same reason and you are there to all support each other. And we've been, Aaron, for instance, he's got so much freedom there. He gets up in the morning, he gets on his bike and he just goes to see someone. And he doesn't care what age they are, where they're from. If there's a new person on site, come to sort of like park up for a couple of weeks, he just goes off and chats. And he just goes and finds people, and he's got the freedom to do that because we're all looking out for each other, and because we've got no fences and barriers and that kind of thing around. We've got no roads coming through, so he has got the freedom of being able to go wherever he wants to see whoever he wants because he knows that he's safe and people are going to go and say hello to him. He's got so much confidence from people that he's very, very sociable in that way. And I think that's a really, really good thing about it is that he's built that network up and the ability to talk in two languages and communicate on so many different levels with different people. But again, it's to say it's very, very different to living in a house, very different to living in a flat because we lived in a block of flats once before. And this was in London, and the neighbours didn't talk to each other at all. You all knew who you were, but you wouldn't pop round and see each other or do anything. And this is like a very close-knit village, but even more so. So you are in each other's pockets and you end up, because we've got a recycling area, when you're bored of your clothes, you put them in a recycling area and you end up seeing other people wearing your clothes and you just get used to that and everybody kind of swaps things and it's an awful lot of sharing. So you become part of one very dense knitted fabric, really.
Oh, that's really cool. It sounds cool. Well, especially for a kid as well to be. I think it's a very sort of rare thing these days for children to have that sort of freedom now.
It is, and it's one thing that when Aaron was born, we were in a council flat in London, and we both decided that we're just going to hit on the road because it's just like everybody's like, well, you can't go travelling now. You just had a child. It's kind of like, no, actually, this is the perfect time to go travelling because this is the perfect time for him to learn more about life. Because if we're just stuck in that council flat in southeast London, he'd be a very, very different child now, and he wouldn't have any of the freedom that he has now. And he's developing skills that come with it. So to a lot of people, it looked like a very tough decision to make, but actually it wasn't. It was a very straightforward. We've done it for Aaron. We've done it for ourselves, really, because we're just that way inclined anyway. But it's been brilliant for him.
Oh, he's a very sweet child, and he is very incredibly sociable.
Yeah, yes, you can't stop him talking sometimes to people,
I love
which is
that.
brilliant.
Oh, super. So, where is the best place for the listeners to come find you then?
On my website, right, okay, my website is woollywormhead.com. I tend to hang out either on Twitter as Woolly Wormhead or on Instagram as Woolly Wormhead or on Ravelry again as Woolly Wormhead, but I'm not on Ravelry. I'm only on there every few days at the moment because I'm traveling a lot, so I don't always have the time to switch on my laptop. Whereas at least with Twitter and Instagram, they're on my phone, so I can normally be found there. Although I don't, if people need to get in touch and ask me a question about a pattern, they just email me because I don't do customer service on Twitter. I'm afraid I can't. There's not enough characters and it gets very complicated. So yes, Twitter, Instagram, email, or my website, those places.
Super. And your website does have a lot of really good resources as well in terms of tutorials for certain
Yeah,
different
I'm trying to
aspects. So.
build up a few more as well because I'm really into the techniques. It's something I really like to encourage people to learn. So I'm trying to build that up even more.
Lovely. So, have you got any parting words then of advice for those who would like to get into the industry?
Yes, I think we've covered the bits already. It's basically be yourself, be authentic, but also know your limits. Don't go in with your head in the clouds. Be quite realistic. You don't have to be a perfectionist. You don't have to be super critical of yourself. You just have to be aware of what you can and can't do. And then when you know those things, find out what you can do to either sort it out, either to hire somebody, outsource something, or will learn how to do it yourself that then fits in with who you are. Because we're all different. We're all different creatively. We've all got our own style. We all work different hours. We can't all be one thing. We have to be ourselves. Otherwise, you just start to fall apart. The cracks will show really quickly. So know what you need to do. Find out what you can't do, and then work it all out to make sure that you stay on your path to be you. Really, that's what you need to do. That's where I think all of us fall at some point is we lose our way in because our creative insecurities or just kind of kick in, and then just remember to be your core self, and then you be all right.
Perfect. So, let's get a bit excited because we like to finish on a ridiculously exciting note. What's next for your business? What can we look forward to from you over the next few months?
Sticky pointy hats. I'm working on. I mean, I'm working on turning heads, which is where the book where I break my own rules because these are not gradable hats. I'm having to grade them through needle sizes, which is perfectly doable. But I like the challenge of grading a hat with maths. But these ones they can't. They're very, very sculptural. There's a lot of heavy technique in there. But I want to push wearability as far as I can. I want to actually have pieces that are constructed from knitted fabric that have the true sculptural form that are still wearable, but they are pushing each one of those limits. And I've done a few of the designs so far. And I'm just getting mad ideas from all the time, and I've been collecting all the yarn. So and it's a slow project. It's a project of love. It's not something I'm going to rush, but this is what I'm looking forward to, and I'm really, really excited about it. I can't wait. I feel like I've come back full circle to be. This is what I am. This is where I'm really happiest. Is just making something that's just really pushing, and people just kind of look at it and just go, "That's a fantastic hat." And probably never wear it, but um, I don't know if that even matters at the moment. I'd like people to. I'm making them so they're wearable, but I want them to make something sculptural.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's where the art aspect of it comes in, isn't it? So,
I think so. I think I've been losing that a little bit. That's natural because I've been following different creative paths and doing some more designing. But sometimes designing can be not artistic enough because sometimes the process and the construction of the design takes over, and then all the other elements take over. And you just think, actually, no, I just want to kick all that away. And I just want to make this thing and say, sod it. If nobody likes it, well, it doesn't matter because I do. You've got to, I need that creative fulfillment, really. And so far, so good. The hats that I've shown to people, that people have seen, they've been absolutely overwhelmed with them. One of them is coming out next month, called a pattern called Tucked, that I designed last year and put up on my blog. And I put the photos up on the blog. And since then, I still get regular emails. People have spotted it on Pinterest. People are getting in touch with me all the time saying, when is that hat coming out? And that's great because it's one of these out there hats that I'm just pushing my own buttons for. And it's just like everybody's loving it. So it's like, okay, that's good. That's good. I'm going in the right direction again.
super, that's brilliant.
Mm.
Well, I'm conscious that we've kept you for quite a long time already, and so I think we'll wrap up there. But thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing all of your creative process and your top tips with us. It's really very much appreciated.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed being here and chatting away.
No problem. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much for listening, and a huge thank you to Woolly for coming on to the show and sharing so much of her process and her creative ideas and her background with us. I found it really interesting listening to her, and I'm sure you did too. There's quite a lot of things I didn't know about Woolly that I know now. So all that remains for me to say is don't forget to go and vote in the UK Podcasters Awards. You've only got a week left. Just reminding you, in case you've drifted off into a sculptural hat sort of fantasy world and you're mentally knitting all your stuff, just to remind you to go and do that. But I hope you will all have a lovely week. Happy crafting, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Bye. You've been listening to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can do so via the blog, or I'm Shiny Bees on Ravelry, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest and Facebook. You can email me at shinybeesinfo@gmail.com. Music for this episode is provided by Music Alley, and it is Adam and the Walter Boys and I Need a Drink.
I need a drink.